Hello, I'm Laura Bennett with German with Laura, and this is my third video in a 10-part series on how to learn German smarter, not harder. In this video, we're going to talk about my top 3 tips for mastering German noun gender efficiently and effectively. So what is German noun gender? German noun gender is a grammar system that associates one of 3 genders, masculine, feminine, or neuter, with every single noun from table to tree to piglet, okay? So if you've been working with popular apps or software programs that are all about vocabulary building, you have possibly noticed that there is a der, die, das coming in front of all of the nouns. Conventional wisdom tells us that we have to memorize this der, die, das in front of all nouns, but newsflash, this is really hard to do because there are thousands of nouns, and learning a der, die, das in front of them when it's just totally random is very difficult to do. Now, if you've already been watching some videos here on YouTube, you've already been exposed to this idea that there are noun endings and noun groups that make it much, much easier to learn German noun gender. So my first tip in this video is that we need to work with those noun groups and endings. Then secondly, though, and this is also new information, there is a particular way that we can best internalize this information. We have to know where to start with this, because even though noun endings and noun groups are so much easier to work with than just a random der, die, das with thousands of nouns, we still need to have some guidance to know where to start with this whole program. That's what we're going to talk about in point 2. And then my third point in this video is that there are particular memory aids that can really supercharge your German learning when it comes to nouns specifically. So point 1, the noun groups and the noun endings. For those of you to whom this is brand new information, we're going to look at some examples. So masculine noun endings include, for example, ling, L-I-N-G, ich, IG, and again ich. Note the exact same pronunciation there, even though the spelling's different, as in Fäustling, Essig, and Teppich, right? And these words mean mitten, vinegar, and carpet. Okay, so semantically they have absolutely nothing in common, right? But it's just how they're spelled. It's these particular endings that we associate with being masculine. So whenever you come across a noun with ling, ich, or ish, you can know that it's going to have a der in front of it, that it's going to be der Fäustling, der Essig, der Teppich, okay? And then for additional examples, it would also be der Diamant, der Motor, der Campus. But the reason why I have these 3 examples in parentheses is because there are so many noun endings. There are about 45 altogether that are worthwhile to learn. And of those, though, we can subcategorize into the noun endings you want to learn first and the additional noun endings that you learn a little later down the road. And the reason why we divide them is because there are noun endings such as ling, ich, and ich that are ironclad. There are no exceptions to these endings, okay? So no exceptions, okay? And then there are the other body of endings such as ant, or, and us down here with Diamant, Motor, and Campus, where there are a handful of exceptions to these endings. And so we save those for a little bit down the road when we also study exception lists that go along with them, okay? So those are examples of masculine noun endings. We also have, of course, feminine noun endings and then also neuter noun endings. Okay, so we have the same setup here. There are some feminine noun endings, most of them actually, that are pretty ironclad with no exceptions, and those would include the endings heit, schaft, and kite. Okay, so when you come across German nouns with any of these endings, you know that you're going to have to pair a die with them, that it's die Krankheit, die Freundschaft, die Wohnung, die Eitelkeit. Okay, the benefit of learning these 45-ish endings all together is that then when you come across one of the dozens or scores of other nouns that have that exact same ending, you automatically know its gender. It is not random, okay? It is not random. But then we also, again, have additional endings such as ION, E, A, IK, and UR that are generally feminine, but there are some exceptions to them. So we learn those a little bit later in the game. We start with the ironclad ones first, all right? And then with some neuter examples, we have Mädchen, Büchlein, Etikett with the ETT, Fossil with the IL. These are also the surefire ones. That's where you start. And then down the road, you can learn all of the nouns that end with ment and and IER, MA, right? And the exceptions that go along with them. Okay, so that's the idea of working with German noun endings. Now we also have this concept of German noun groups. And this is kind of the opposite idea, because with the noun endings, like I said earlier, they involve nouns that are semantically unrelated. Okay, the only thing that the nouns will share in common is the ending, right? The ending that is associated with one of the three genders. But with German noun groups, now we'll have all sorts of different endings or a lack of ending. Maybe it's a monosyllable or whatever, but all of the nouns in the group will still be masculine or feminine or neuter because of the common theme, because of the category that it belongs to. So, for example, we have masculine groups such as months and seasons, or weather elements, or currency. So that means that the month of September would be der September, right? Because it's one of the months of the year. And it's in the season of autumn, which is der Herbst. Okay, so then we have weather elements such as der Wind, or der Schnee for snow, or der Regen for rain, right? And these are all der, they're all masculine because they are part of this group, yeah? And then so likewise with the currency, for example, it is der Dollar, right? And der Euro. Okay, so that's the concept of groups. So when it comes to feminine groups, some of the options here are to learn trees, fruits, and flowers. So we have, for example, die Kiefer, which means pine, a pine tree. We have die Melone for melon, and we die Rose for a rose, all right? And then with neuter noun groups, for example, metals, countries, hotels, as in das Gold, das Canada, okay, and das Ritz, okay? Again, because not how it's spelled or anything other than its semantic meaning that it belongs to one of these categories. So this brings us now to point number 2 of how can we most effectively internalize this information. Okay, and my tip for you is that you don't want to actually go about memorizing this information right from the get-go. Instead, you want to have all of the information put together so that you can reference it, so that you can actually practice applying the information by just always going back to that reference material. And the benefit of doing it this way is that rather than getting the information just in your short-term memory, you're going to truly internalize it in your long-term memory because you're putting it in context and practicing it. So you can find these various lists all over the place, but you can also find them on my website. You can click the link down in the description, open that up in another tab, and I'm also going to share it with you right now. Okay, so here on my website, you can check out the article German Noun Gender, Your Essential Guide, right? You can, of course, read the whole thing, but you can also jump ahead, for example, to the noun groups, like we were just talking about. And you can see here under the masculine noun groups, right? So many options. We were talking about weather a little bit ago. So just to check that out, okay? So for example, der Taifun, der Wind, der Frost, der Nebel, okay? And then I also have listed various common exceptions to the groups, all right? So then you can check out the feminine groups, the neuter groups, okay? And then you get into the noun forms, aka the noun endings, okay? And those are like some of them we had mentioned earlier in this video, right? With the ling, for example. And again, you click on it and you can see examples and also common exceptions when that is the case, all right? So by referencing lists like this, one, you take off a lot of pressure from yourself, but again, two, if you reference, and then also drill the material by, say, writing out simple sentences with that new vocabulary word, then this will be internalized very deeply, and you'll get to that point then where you don't have to reference the list anymore. So the process that I would recommend to you is when you come across a new vocabulary word, come to a place like my website and check these lists, check to see, okay, does this have an ending on it that I can associate with being masculine, feminine, or neuter, right? Yes or no. And then if the answer is no, then I would go check to see, does this belong to a group that I can associate with being either masculine, feminine, or neuter, okay? And most nouns are going to fall into one of those two categories or even both. Sometimes we have nouns that have both a masculine ending and belong to a masculine group, such as spring, right? The season of the year. That is a masculine group, but the word for spring also happens to have the masculine ending ling, der Frühling, okay? So when you find that new vocabulary word, check both of those places, the endings and the groups, to see if it applies. And then you want to really leverage your adult advantage as a German learner and take that extra analysis step and kind of recite to yourself, okay, the noun Frühling is masculine because it has the ending ling, and in this instance also belongs to the noun group for days, months, and seasons, right? And if you work on it in that way, right, making those associations, connecting those dots, that's going to be much more effective and efficient learning that will take the learning thousands of German nouns and making it a lot simpler. Okay, so now point number 3, a couple other memory aids that are really powerful that I super love are to essentially work with your imagination. Make it visual. Very important. You may have noticed in those examples that I was color coding. So way back 20 years ago when I first started learning German, I decided that I was going to associate masculine nouns with the color red and feminine nouns with the color blue, neuter nouns with the color green. Okay, so you can choose whatever colors you want to, but working with color is a really effective memory aid. Our brains hang on to that information better. It's stickier, if you will. Okay, so whatever colors you pick, I encourage you to pick colors for masculine, feminine, and neuter. And anytime you write them down, right, anytime that you write down a masculine word, write it down in a red pen or circle it in red or do something with that color. Imagine it in red, right? If you're learning der Tisch for table, imagine red tables, right? Not any other color, red, so that you can build that bridge in your brain between the word table, which is a masculine noun, being red, okay? So that it sticks better. So we can take the same concept of using the visual imagery of colors to the next level. So not only do we associate red with masculine and blue, with feminine and green, with neuter, now we can also have people that we associate with these different genders. So for example, I associate the Queen of England with feminine, okay? And then this is my favorite part. You can use a technique called Memory Palace to take a bunch of different feminine nouns and think of them all in blue, okay, and associate them with the Queen of England. Let me give you this example, okay? So you have the Queen of England, right? She is wearing a blue blouse, bluse, that is covered in blue bloomin, okay, so flowers. It has this big ghastly blue Schleife at the top of it. Out of nowhere comes flying this blue Eule with a blue Gabel in his claws, and he pokes her right in the Schulter, okay? And that is to help you, these wacky mental images help you remember these particular nouns are feminine. They're blue, and they're being associated with the Queen of England. And you can do this for masculine nouns and neuter nouns as well, okay? So in an upcoming video, I get into even more study tips. You can look forward to that. But in the meantime, if you have not watched my first two videos, you can start this series from the beginning, or you can continue on to the next video in which I'm going to give you my top tips for learning German noun plurals because, surprise, it is also not random. There are principles and patterns that make learning German noun plurals also easier. You can do it better and faster. I'm going to show you how in the next video. Bis dann.